Hello, namaste.
Namaste, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good, thank you. And sorry for the delay, Sabina.
It's
And
okay.
before going to start your session, I want to introduce you to our audience.
Sure.
Yeah. Sabina Giri is a psychotherapist and well-being coach with master's degree in clinical psychology and international relations and diplomacy. As a founder and CEO of the Healer Nepal Private Limited, she is committed to advancing accessible, evidence-based mental health care. Her work includes psychotherapy, psychological first aid (PFA), trauma and anxiety counseling, relationship counseling, and burnout management for adolescents and adults. She has contributed to crisis response initiatives and the expansion of digital mental health services while actively promoting mental health awareness through clinical practice, training, and public interaction. As an international speaker and mental health advocate, she welcomes collaborations that strengthen mental health systems and promote psychological well-being. That was an interesting bio, Sabina Giri, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much, Melinda, for the beautiful introduction. And thank you so much once again for the beautiful energy and that vibes, which helps me to begin my presentation as well. So, namaste and good afternoon, everyone. Distinguished chairs, respected colleagues, researchers, clinicians, and guests. Thank you so much for being here today. As he already mentioned, my name is Sabina Giri, and I'm a psychotherapist and well-being coach. And especially, I would also like to work in women's mental health, I am also going to talk about this topic today. So today, I'm honored to present my work titled "Healing the Invisible Wounds: Women, Trauma, and Emotional Well-being." It is a privilege to share this work with you, and I sincerely thank the conference organizers for this opportunity. Before I begin the presentations, let me take you 2 minutes to arrive fully in this moment. Please sit comfortably and place both of your legs or feet on the floor. If you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes or you can soften your gaze. Take a slow breath in and breathe out. Once again, take a slow breath in and breathe out. Now, bring to mind one people who has positively influenced your life. It could be a teacher, your friend, or your family members, colleagues, or any people, any mentor, or anyone. Notice what you appreciate about them. It could be their kindness, their encouragement, their wisdom, or simply the way they made you feel. Take another slow breath. Now ask yourself, how can I bring even a small part of that quality into this room today? Take a moment to hold that intention. Breathe in slowly and breathe out. When you are ready, gently open your eyes and bring that quality with you as we begin our time together. And while opening your eyes, I hope you have a big smile in your face as well. So, we will definitely discuss about the experience. So, before I begin my topic, I would like to reference Dr. Kelesha. She had just presented her work on women that she said that to reconnect, rebuild, and reawaken. I really liked about this, and it is not always broken, and it is not about fixing ourselves because we are not broken, but to look about ourselves, what is already inside there. This is so touchy lines, and my topic is also women, trauma, and emotional well-being. So let me begin. So before we begin with the science, I would like to invite you to think about trauma in a slightly different way. not only as a diagnosis, not only as a traumatic event, but as an experience that can quietly shape a person's identity, relationship, emotional world, and opportunities, often without being ever recognized. I'd like to begin with this story. Imagine a woman in her mid 30s. She is highly educated. She has built a successful career. She is respected by her colleagues, deeply committed to her families, and often everyone turns on for support. From the outside, she appears strong and resilient. But beneath that strength, she carries struggle that few people see. She finds it difficult to say no even when she's exhausted. She apologizes even when she has done nothing wrong. She constantly worries and disappointing others. She worries about. She feels guilty when she prioritizes her own needs. Despite her achievements, she questions her own self-worth. And even with the people who care about her, she finds it difficult to fully trust. She has never described herself as traumatized, but she believes this is simply who she is. However, what if it is not? What if these are not personality traits but invisible ones, which also known as adaptive responses shaped by years of emotional neglect, chronic criticism, unequal power relationship, or experiences where emotional safety was repeatedly compromised? The women in this story is fictional. However, many of us, through our clinical practice, research, teachings, or communities, have encountered women with remarkably similar kind of experiences. So these are women whose sufferings often remain unseen, not because it is absent, but because it has been normalized. And it is these invisible wounds that inspired this work. Today, I'll explore how trauma shapes women's emotional well being, why existing mental health frameworks may not fully address these experiences, and how we can move toward a more gender responsive and trauma informed approach to healing. Let's go to the background of this study. As a mental health professionals, we all know that trauma is one of the strongest predictor of long-term psychological distress. However, trauma is not always experienced equally. Across the world, women are disproportionately exposed to chronic interpersonal trauma, including childhood abuse, intimate partner violence, sexual violence, emotional neglect, workplace harassment, coercive control, and structural discrimination. According to World Health Organization, approximately 1 in 3 women globally experience physical or sexual violence during their lifetime. This statistic is deeply concerning. However, numbers alone cannot capture the full picture and the full impact of trauma. Trauma influences how people think, feel, and connect with others and understand themselves. It can also affect how the nervous system responds to safety and threat. Over the past 2 decades, neuroscience has shown us that trauma is not only stored as a memory, it is also experienced through the body. Prolonged activation of stress response systems can affect emotional regulation, attention, sleep, relationship, and definitely physical health. This understanding has transformed the way we view recovery. Yet, despite these advances, many women continue to remain unseen within mental health system. Why? It is because trauma does not always appear in obvious ways. Many women continue working, caring for their families, supporting others, and achieving professionally. From the outside, they may appear to be functioning well. However, internally, they may experience emotional exhaustion, chronic shame, perfectionism, people pleasing, hypervigilance, and persistent self doubt. These experiences are often misunderstood as personality traits rather than responses shaped by trauma itself. This distinction is critical. When we interpret survival responses as personal weakness, we risk treating symptoms while overlooking the experiences and conditions that created them. I believe this remains one of the important challenges facing contemporary mental health care. Recognizing this challenge led me to ask the central question: if a woman's trauma is shaped by relationships, cultures, and gender experiences. Are our current models sufficient to understand and support their recovery? So let's talk about the research gap and aim. When I began reviewing the literatures, I found remarkable progress in the field of trauma research. We now have stronger evidence on complex post-traumatic stress disorder, known as PTSD, CPTSD, greater understanding of trauma neurobiology, and growing recognition of trauma-informed care as an important approach in mental health. However, several important gaps remain. First, much of the existing trauma literature has focused on post traumatic stress disorder following single or discrete traumatic events. While this work has been essential, it does not fully capture the experiences of women who live with chronic interpersonal trauma occurring over months or over years. Second, many existing frameworks remain largely gender neutral. Although they recognize the impact of trauma, they often give limited attention to how gender roles, unequal power distribution, or unequal power relationship, caregiving expectations, and social norms influence both women's experiences of trauma and their pathways to recovery. Third, much of the available evidences come from high income countries. While these findings are valuable and important, they may not fully represent the realities of women in low and middle income countries, where trauma often intersects with poverty, limited mental health services, cultural expectations, and broader social inequalities. This is particularly relevant in countries such as Nepal, where strong cultural and community strength exists alongside significant challenges in accessing mental health care. So these gaps led to the central purpose of this study. My aim was not simply to summarize existing trauma literature. Instead, I sought to integrate evidence from trauma psychology, women's mental health, neuroscience, global mental health, and cultural psychiatry to address one central question: how can we better understand and support women's emotional recovery in ways that are evidence based, culturally responsive, and empowering? To address this question, I conducted an integrative conceptual review and, through synthesis of the literature, developed the gender responsive trauma informed recovery framework. My hope is that this framework contributes not only to academic discussion, but also to clinical practice, mental health policy, and ultimately to improving the lives of women whose psychological sufferings often remain unseen. So, after identifying this gap, the next question becomes: how did I approach the evidence and how was this framework developed? So, this brings me to the methodology. Now, let me briefly explain how this study was conducted. This study used an integrative conceptual review, which is well suited for exploring complex issues like women's trauma that span multiple disciplines, because trauma is influenced by psychological, biological, social, and cultural factors. This approach allowed me to integrate evidences from neuroscience, psychology, public health, gender studies, and cultural psychiatry into a single framework. So to ensure a comprehensive review, I searched five major database: PubMed, PsycInfo, Scopus, Web of Science, and Google Scholars, and included peer-reviewed studies published between 2010 and 2025. I then used thematic synthesis to identify recurring patterns across the literature, which informed the development of the proposed gender-responsive trauma recovery framework. From this thematic synthesis, four overarching themes emerged. Together, these themes form the foundation of framework I will present next. Before introducing the framework, I'd like to briefly summarize each of these themes. Key findings. Let's discuss about it. From the thematic synthesis, four overarching themes emerged. The first theme is that trauma is deeply gendered. Women are more likely to experience chronic interpersonal trauma, including childhood abuse, intimate partner violence, including sexual violence, chronic emotional neglect by one parents and or after husband and his parents, workplace harassment, and coercive control, indirect kind of control. Unlike a single traumatic event, these experiences are often repeated and occur within relationships where safety and trust are expected. As Dr. Kalesa mentioned before, the emotional safety. So that emotional safety has been ruptured everywhere, wherever she goes. So as a result, they affect not only fear responses, but also identity, attachment, and emotional regulation. The second theme is that trauma disrupts a woman's relationship with herself. Yeah, many women present not only with distress, but also with chronic shame, self criticism. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe it is my fault. Asking all these questions. Maybe I should have endured more. Or maybe it's me. Or maybe is it my luck? So the self criticism goes in a cycle. And the perfectionism. I have to be perfect daughter. I have to be perfect daughter-in-law. I have to be perfect in every role. So difficulty setting boundaries. They can't say no. So yeah, Dr. Kalesa has mentioned it in her presentation also. We can't say no. So saying no is saying yes to oneself. Where females are finding it very much difficult to set a boundary. And emotional numbness. Neither they can share nor they can feel it. So they go into emotional numbing, the emotional numbness or persistent guilt. Rather than viewing these as personality traits, the literature suggests they are adaptive survival responses to environments where emotional safety was lacking. In our culture, also say that these are the good daughters syndromes. Oh, she is so beautiful, she is so good that she bears everything, she handles everything on her own. So it is giving meaning from the cultures in a different way so that it makes them difficult to set boundaries. The third thing is that culture plays a dual role here. Cultural norms, stigma, silence, and unequal power relationship can contribute to trauma in one hand. At the same time, on the other hand, culture can also support healing through family, community, shared identity, and spirituality. So this highlights the needs of trauma-informed care that is culturally responsive rather than based on a one-size-fits-all approach. The fourth and most hopeful theme is that recovery is possible through empowerment. Across the literature, recovery is described as more than symptom reduction. It involves restoring safety, rebuilding trust, reclaiming one's voice, strengthening a relationship, and reconnecting with a sense of purpose. Recovery is not about returning to who someone was before trauma. However, it is all about developing greater self awareness, confidence, and resilience. These four themes became the foundation for the gender responsive trauma recovery framework proposed in this study. So, this led to an important question here. How can these findings be translated into a practical model that clinicians, researchers, and policymakers can use? To address this, I developed the gender responsive trauma informed recovery framework. Let's go to slide 6. Proposed gender responsive trauma informed recovery framework. I consider this framework to be the primary contribution of this paper. Rather than viewing trauma recovery as a linear process, I purpose of framework built around 6 interconnected pillars that supports women's emotional healing. These pillars are not sequential steps. Instead, they work together and reinforce one another throughout the recovery journey. The first pillar is emotional safety. Trauma disrupts a person's fundamental sense of safety. Before healing can begin, women need environments where they can feel physically, emotionally, and psychologically secure. This includes therapeutic relationships, families, workplaces, and communities that promote respect, predictability, and trust, which enables to build safety, emotional safety in women. Furthermore, the second pillar is trust and compassion. Trauma often damages trust not only in others but also in oneself. Many women experiences shame and self-blame. As I already mentioned, the repeated cycle of questioning oneself. Maybe it is me. That is why I got to feel and bear all these things. Maybe I need to learn more. Maybe I have to endure more. Maybe or something like that. Always the chronic self-blame and shame. So building compassionate relationship. while also encouraging self compassion, helps rebuild identity, restore trust, and reduce internalized stigma in women. The third pillar is empowerment and voice. A defining feature of trauma is the loss of control. When we are told to sort of always in the name of culture, in the name of being disciplined, or a good girl, or a good daughter in law, good staff, or anything. So we lose that sense of control, the loss of control. So recovery therefore involves restoring a sense of agency. This means supporting women to make informed decisions, set healthy boundaries, express their needs, and participate confidentially in their families, workplaces, and communities. The fourth pillar is cultural sensitivity. Healing does not only occur separately from culture. Trauma informed care should respect cultural beliefs, family structures, community values, and local understanding of mental health. What is effective in one setting may not be appropriate in another. So, this is particularly relevant in low and middle income countries such as Nepal, where culture and community relationship plays an important role in recovery. For example, in our culture, we tend to bow our head in front of our elders, basically females. Not these days, but quite in remote areas, it is still there. So when we go to and sit in the counseling setting, we can't say that this person has low self identity or low self esteem. We can't say that. Whenever there is somebody strangers, we don't do eye contact. So if we don't know about this cultural sensitivity and we diagnose that person as having low self-esteem, no eye contact, there that would be a problematic. So we have to make it a center. We have the culture should be a central part and very sensitive part, which plays an important and a very vital role in recovery. The fifth pillar is the holistic healing. Trauma affects the mind, body, relationship, and everyday functioning. Recovery should therefore integrate psychological care with physical well-being, social support, and meaningful engagement in daily life. Healing is not only reducing symptoms, it is about restoring a person's ability to live a meaningful and fulfilling life. As I already mentioned, it is healing always doesn't mean reducing symptoms or becoming the same person before trauma. So it is about restoring a person's ability to live a meaningful life and giving meaning to that trauma and having a very broader vision to see that incident and grow from that. Not becoming that older version, but growing from that same place where she has been traumatized. The last and the sixth pillar is psychological resilience. Resilience is more than simply enduring hardships. We are told to say, in our culture, we are told to say, resilience is the enduring all the hardships in the family. Oh my god, you are so beautiful daughter, you are so resilient, you are really very blessed from god. So in the name of culture, in this kind of things, they told us to endure hardships, not always directly but in indirect way, saying you are, it's not criticizing everywhere, but some of the in some of the parts we are praised in a very disguised way that makes us to endure all those hardships and not to set boundaries to protect ourselves. So, in this framework, it means developing the capacity to adapt, seek support, recovery, recover from adversity, and continue growing while acknowledging the lasting impact of. So, let's talk about the implications. How does this framework means for clinical practice? Slide 7. One of the most important shifts I'm proposing is a change in the questions we ask. Instead of asking, what's wrong with this person? I can encourage us to ask, what has this person experienced? This simple shift helps us understand trauma responses as adaptive ways of coping with adversity rather than personal weaknesses. So, We have to ask ourselves, I think we have to ask ourselves as an individual, not in a policy level, not in an institution, not in a clinical practice, as an individual, wherever you are. If we started asking questions, what is wrong with this person, to what has this person experienced, this can have a very beneficial impact in the people, or we stop or we can't go to torture the traumatized person even more. So from this perspective, we can build a stronger therapeutic relationship by reducing shame, for not bearing, for not enduring all those hardships, all those blame, and all those pains. Fostering trust and creating a safe space for healing. It is very, very much important, a safe space. The person needs to feel safe, and physically, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, then only it allows us for healing. I also recommend a routine trauma screening in women's mental health services, particularly for women presenting with depression, anxiety, chronic pain, reproductive health concerns, or relationship difficulties. However, screening should always be accompanied by appropriate support, because identifying trauma without the capacity to respond can be even more harmful and dangerous. Finally, I believe trauma informed principles should extend beyond individual therapy and become part of healthcare and community systems, creating environments that promote safety, respect, and dignity. While these principles are relevant globally, they are particularly important in countries where mental health resources are limited and social determinants have a profound influence on well being. So let's go to the relevance to Nepal and low and middle income countries in slide 8. Let's go to slide 8. Although this framework has global relevance, it was also shaped by my experiences working in Nepal as a psychotherapist, working with adolescents and adults. Like many low and middle income countries, Nepal faces significant challenges in mental health care. Specialist mental health professionals are limited, services are concentrated in urban areas, and stigma continues to prevent many people from seeking help, even with the educated one. Whenever they call, they give a call, and I don't feel so. Whenever we are in therapy sessions, they say the most educated. I'm talking about the most educated people. What they said, we have to talk about your family background. They say, no, 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 my family is very good. They all are. We are so rich financially. We all of us siblings are educated, and all these things. We don't know what emotional neglect is. We don't know what feeling abandoned is. So we have already, or we have only focused on finance and richness to check or to that criteria is reaches. So women often experience multiple and overlapping challenges, including gender-based violence, economic dependence. They have to rely on their male partners. Unequal access to education. So you are a daughter and you are going to marry and going to others' home. So why should you have a very good studies? It is still there in remote parts of Nepal, and I hope South Asian and African contexts or low or middle income countries, and employment also. So migration related to family separation and social expectations, especially the social expectation to prioritize the needs of others before their own. If you see is feeling sick, let me give you one example of my mother. um, she was sick. I now know what she was going through, but she was very sick, and she was like, her head was aching so much, and I told we were small, maybe 10 years back, and she was tying some cloths in her head to soothe herself, and she was there in kitchen to cook, and she never allowed my father to cook. So I learned that personally. I learned that is what we have to do. And before I read and before I came to this field, I reflected myself while making these presentations also, and I realized we copy, we tend to learn, as global social learning theory said, we tend to learn so many things by looking at our environment. Yeah, I reflected and I have adopted so many kind of those kind of traits that my mother has done. Before she was saying, before she teach me that you need to do this, you need to do that, I learned that by myself, that it is what I need to do. So that has made me go through some of the pains and all those things. This is my personal experiences, not only my experiences. I talk with clients, I talk with also different groups, I talk and sharing sessions also. They share all these things, even being educated, even being independent and highly commanding and confident people. So these factors can risk both the risk and long-term impact of trauma. How I treat my husband is basically, I'm grabbing it from how my mother treated my father and all the male parts. And now and she used to blame for not doing that things, but she never asked him to do. Similarly, that pattern is repeating in generational cycle also. So we have to look at these things very seriously. At the same time, Nepal or other countries has also important strengths. Close-knit communities, supportive families, and spiritual and cultural practices can all promote resilience and recovery. These are valuable resources that mental health systems should build upon rather than overlook. For example, when we had the earthquake in 2015, there was one study, and it was found that Nepali people were so resilient in coping with the trauma. So they found that it is because of that community role, that support system, that families and cultural practices. So it is beneficial at one side. At the same time, it is traumatic or risk that both can exist together. So this is why I believe trauma-informed care should not be viewed as simply applying Western models to different cultural settings. Instead, it should involve adapting evidence-based principles to local realities, listening to communities, respecting cultural values, and working in partnership with people we are going to serve or we serve. This framework I have presented today is intended to contribute to this conversation by bringing together international trauma science with the lived realities of women in diverse cultural contexts. My hope is that it can support research, clinical practice, and policy not only in Nepal but also in other low and middle income countries where women's psychological trauma often remain under recognized. Recognizing these realities naturally leads us to the question, what should we do next? Let's move forward to slide 9, recommendation. Based on this review, I would like to highlight 4 key recommendations. First, the clinical practice. Trauma informed care should become a routine part of women's mental health services. We treat anxiety, depressions, or psychosomatic issues, but we never go through the underlying cause. We treat those parts, but there remains the scars. So we have to deal with those things as well. As a clinical clinicians, we need to focus on those parts as well. So this includes trauma assessment, respectful and culturally responsive communications, and interventions that support emotional regulation, self compassion, and restoration of confidence and agency. Secondly, the for mental health system, mental health services should be safe, accessible, and integrated into primary healthcare and community setting, especially in countries like Nepal and low and middle income countries, because it is not accessible, and if yes accessible, also it is very costly, and they can't take the services. So, trauma informed care should not be limited to specialist clinics, but should also become part of the broader healthcare system. So, if we can indulge it in primary healthcare and community setting, it would be very much easier for us to reach to the roots of those peoples, and there we engage community setting and primary mental health care, and the people engaged there, so who is literally really aware about cultural values and beliefs. So this helps our mental health systems boost for a broader healthcare system. For policy, trauma should be recognized as both a mental health and public health priorities. We all know that mental health issues is the first priority in global arena. Suicide is the third most important death cause. When we see the statistics, so many things. So policies should focus on preventing gender-based violence, improving access to mental health care, and reducing stigma associated with seeking support. I'm a husband and I can beat literally to my wife as a love. Yes, that is considered as love. Or that female also saying, okay, it's okay. We can say the marital rapes also, the issues of marital rape and so many things. So if we focus on policies, which focuses and prioritize on preventing gender-based violence, it can improve the access to mental health care and the reducing stigma to seek support, from reducing stigma associated with seeking support. Fourth, for research, definitely the most important. The proposed framework requires further empirical evaluation across diverse population and cultural contexts. Not only in Nepal, not only in Africa, not only in Australia, or not only in Asia, so in most of the parts of the population, so that we can reach to the ground reality of female and what they are going through. So this future research should examine its effectiveness and explore its long-term impact on psychological well-being, resilience, and recovery.
Sabina,
Finally, I encourage greater
Sabina,
investment in yes.
sorry to interrupt, that we are running out of time. It is already 36 minutes. So
Okay,
can you
just give
please
me
conclude? Yeah.
yeah, give me just 3 to 4 minutes. I
Yeah.
will conclude. So, as we have time constraint, let's go to the conclusion. So, we all know that these are not signs of weakness. They may be lasting effects of experiences that shape the way someone learned to survive in environments where safety, trust, or belonging were uncertain. So this is why I believe trauma-informed care is more than a clinical approach. It is a commitment to human dignity. It is a commitment to equity, and it is a commitment to ensuring that no woman's psychological suffering remains invisible simply because she learned to carry it silently. So, okay. So I would like to conclude it. So when I would like to end with one final thought. When we support women in healing, we do more than reduce psychological distress. We restore voices, strengthen communities, and create possibilities for future generations to flourish. And as we gather at this international summit on women's leadership excellence, I believe we must recognize that leadership is not only about achievement, influence, or position. True leadership also begins with creating spaces where women can heal, reclaim their voices, and lead with confidence, compassion, and resilience. When women are supported to heal and thrive, they do not only transform their own lives, they inspire stronger families, healthier communities, and more equitable future and a global world also. Thank you so very much, everyone, for your attention. I look forward to your questions and to learning from this important discussion. Have a very good day, everyone.
Thank you, Sabina. Thank you so much for your informative presentation. And we have got a lot of questions from the audience, Sabina. We will directly post it to your email so you can respond there.
So I have to write the answer
No,
in
we
the
will
email.
we will post that questions to your email so you can answer there.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, and please be on the backstage and join the next session, Sabina.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.